What is going on, everybody? Depraved Slasher here with Hellcat.
We're here with something a little different.
We're HellaDepraved. She missed her line.
Yeah, you didn't say it the same way, though.
I really didn't.
No, at all.
Oh, well. So we're doing something a little different, as she said. So I was sitting at work and was thinking to myself, I was like, you know, honestly, I kind of wanted to take a night off from recording reactions, but I didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to record something. And then I remembered Fear Street Part 3 came out, and I was like, well, why don't we just knock out a review for all three of them all at once? Review it as a trilogy.
Right.
Now that they're all done. So, this is a movie review. Now, before we get into spoilers, as a non-spoiler review, I will say if you like horror,
it's worth watching.
And you want to see a good, well put together story told in 3 parts, go watch it.
Yeah. It's actually pretty decent.
Yeah. And there's your spoiler-free review. All right.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
The rest will contain actual spoilers.
Spoilers from here on out. So,
as you can see, I have read Fear Street since I was a teenager and actually preteen. All of these books are from when I was 10, something like that. And I have more because I'm kind of a hoarder of books. So I have more.
Yeah, there's tons more.
R.L. Stine wrote a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And at some point, I would love to get the entire collection of Goosebumps.
Right.
And whatever we probably don't have from Fear Street.
Right.
It'd be fun just to collect all
these
of
are
those.
all Fear Street, not
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
She has no Goosebumps.
Well. I honestly, like I said, I hit them a little too advanced reading to go to Goosebumps. They were too quick of a read.
Right.
So
yes, this is based off of the
trilogy that Netflix put out.
Oh no, the show is based off of the series you see behind us. They're not novels. What the hell would you call them?
They're novels.
Short stories?
They're novels.
Oh no, those are short stories.
I mean, like, they're short stories for us now, but they are considered teenage novels.
Teenage novels.
Yeah. Like I said,
so
preteen.
The first movie is a bit funny in that it took us... the first one, part 1, is 1994.
Soundtrack was epic.
To be fair, the soundtrack in all 3 were fantastic.
Yeah, 1666. I mean, like, they did great instrumentals and everything, but we're talking, like, soundtrack. 94 and 78 were amazing.
Right. 1994, so we had to actually watch it twice.
We didn't have to, but we did.
I felt like we had to.
Right.
Because, we watched it the first time on our own the day it came out.
Right.
And then we watched it again, I believe it was the next night, because that's when Ralph came over. And we were like...
the next night, or was it? It was like the next night or 2 nights later, yeah.
Right, and Ralph came over because we were going to record our podcast. And we ended up watching it with him. And the reason why I said I felt like we had to watch it twice, the first time I watched it, I was not impressed. I was honestly more confused.
Yeah, like, I was confused until the end of it. And at the end of that particular... I'm going to call them movies because they're 2 hours long each.
Right.
At that movie's end, I was like, oh. And then I got it,
right.
And then everything that we had watched prior made sense. So I agree. Watching it a second time, I was like, this is actually really good.
Well, and there were nuances I picked up on the second time.
Right.
That I didn't pick up on the first time.
Right.
Prime example, the first dude that kind of goes crazy that becomes, I guess this movie's Ghostface.
Right.
Which is really just a kid in a skull mask. But...
And black robe.
The kid that becomes that, the moment he's starting to... He has like a fly that's bouncing on him that I didn't even notice the first time.
Yeah, but you don't, because you don't know what it means.
You still don't know what it means by the end of the movie.
Yeah, but you know that it's a precursor to something bad happening. Like the flies, you know, are omens. You don't know why, but you know it's an omen of something.
Sure. They never explained it.
I know, but you have tied together by the end.
They didn't have flies throughout all of it, babe.
In the first one? Because I feel like by the end of the 94, the first one, I knew that the buzzing flies symbolized something was going to happen.
Maybe I'm just dumb and didn't pick up on it then? Because I never noticed a fly throughout the entire movie until the second playthrough.
Oh.
Because if you remember when we watched it the second time, I was like, ooh, he's got a fly buzzing on him.
Right, okay, so I wouldn't call you dumb. I would say maybe unobservant.
Yeah, I'm dumb.
No, that's kind of a guy thing, the unobservant thing.
Yeah. No, but for me, like, I was ready to just... Trash the series after the first watch. Right. I was like... It did nothing for me. Now, I will give it props. I still think the first movie has the best death scene. One of the kids that you're rooting for, not even for her, you're rooting for her for somebody else.
Right. Right. Goes through the bread slicer.
Yeah. So, okay, so it's this girl that ends up liking the... I'm going to call him like the backup.
Main protagonist's brother.
The main protagonist's brother.
Yeah.
He likes her, and then she finally starts to like him. So you start rooting for her to live, mainly for him, because even her as a character is just kind of eh.
Yeah, she's sort of one of those that you were like, oh, please die. At the very beginning, you're like, oh no, please. But I will say this for her. She was also a good friend of the protagonist. And I don't just mean like they were close. I mean like she was actually a good friend in that she was supportive of her the whole way through. Like before bad stuff even started happening, she was supportive of her relationship, yada, yada, yada. So she had some redeeming factors to her.
But so yeah, her head gets put through a bread slicer, which sucks because there's another character I would have rather have gone through that specific death in that movie, which was the really annoying dumbass dude.
Her bestie?
That never redeems himself. Ever.
Doesn't he? I mean, like, I kind of felt like he did. In terms of bravery.
Now, he had...
he stood by his friends, at least.
Right.
Like, guys, I'm not rooting for the, you know... Honestly, I kind of agree, but again, they're teenagers. They're seniors. I don't think that dealing drugs is the way to go. But it was obvious that he was smart in terms of chemistry and whatnot. Probably, if he got his act together, could have gone on and done something with his life and helped others.
Right.
And he was a good friend.
Right. Yeah, I still didn't like him. So
I thought he was comic relief.
So one of the funniest parts in the movie, right? The two main chicks in the movie end up hooking up.
Or they were hooked up prior.
No, I mean actually hooking up.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then, the dude and the chick that
the brother
and the chick that he liked didn't actually hook up, but like
base.
they actually kissed.
First base.
And and this is all happening at the same time, and then you have the comic relief dude who I cannot fucking stand starts beating off.
And then he comes out, wait, did you all?
He's like,
I did too.
He's like, did you? Oh, and did you? I did too.
And I'm just by himself, and they're in pairs, and he's by himself. Like I said, I found him to be comic relief. I really, I enjoyed him by the end. I didn't enjoy him about 3/4 of the way through. And then by the end I was like, you know, and then he died. And then I was like, you know.
Overall acting, I thought was done very well.
Extremely well.
Especially in the first one.
Right.
Which in my opinion is consistent until the third movie. And there's a reason for that, which we haven't actually talked about the third movie together yet.
We just finished it.
We just finished watching it. We just finished watching it.
Right.
But yeah, first movie specifically, and I do feel more so than all of the others, I felt like the acting was spot on.
Right. I think the second movie.
The second movie was really good too. And again, I'm trying to stick to sticking to one movie at a time, and we'll get to those. So I thought the acting was excellent. Story. After watching through the second time,
without watching parts 2 or 3,
without watching parts 2 or 3,
watching it a second time,
I feel like it was a bit of a slow start.
Right.
In terms of how the whole story unfolds. I
think that's also part of where the confusion started, is because it was a slower start.
Well, it's a slower start to the overall story, but it jumps through things so quickly in the beginning, it's hard to really keep up with what's going on. So, like, you kind of learn that the two girls, they're in two completely different schools, but at one point they both lived in what was Shady Side,
right?
And they had a relationship going on, but the girl that now lives in Sunnyvale or Sunny whatever the hell it's called, Sunnyvale. She's now with a guy and pretends none of that ever happened because she's worried about what people would think.
Right.
And then, like, they end up running into each other at this function after some people got killed, and they start arguing.
Well,
which pretty much stays consistent throughout most of this specific
Sam intentionally went to that in order to
start shit.
Well, to talk to her, return her shit. Yeah, start shit. Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry, the most unrealistic fucking thing ever. And don't get me wrong, I get it. But, so they leave, and so after a big fight breaks out, they leave. And the kids on the bus were the kids from from Shady Side.
Right.
And they're being followed.
The wrong side of the tracks.
Right. Yeah. And they're being followed by what ends up being the secondary chick.
Her new boyfriend.
And her new boyfriend.
And one of his friends.
Some other random dude. And they're driving, throwing liquor bottles.
At the bus.
At the bus. And they end up opening up the back bus door while it's in motion. Mm-hmm. And they throw the Gatorade thing out the back by accident.
Yeah.
Which causes a huge accident. And I think this was one of the moments where I was just kind of like, this is some bullshit. Because none of that would have ever happened.
Really?
Anytime I've ever been on a bus, if that back door opens, bus stops immediately.
Okay, that part wouldn't have happened. But I have legit seen...
I'm not saying the douchebags wouldn't be following them starting shit.
And throwing liquor, because that I've seen.
Now, that I have not seen.
I've seen.
If you guys live in areas where that happens, burn it down.
It's... yeah.
I've
seen it.
But no,
Or soda cans.
If that emergency door opens, bus driver does not hesitate.
Now...
And bus driver should have been up in their shit and been like, what the fuck are you doing? And at that point, get the authorities involved.
I was like, okay, this is a normal horror movie because the one adult on scene is non-existent.
Right.
But I have seen... I mean, like... So what would have happened is the kids would have dropped down all of the windows on the bus and started chucking shit out the windows there because the bus driver may or may not notice that.
Right.
However, yeah, the emergency door, that's sort of a thing. And then coincidentally, the car crash ends up digging up Sarah Fear's grave.
Right, which I loved them naming her Sarah Fear. Because Fear Street, and it's a play on words.
But it's also a play on Sarah Good.
Right.
Who Salem Witch Trials.
Right.
Yeah.
So...
And I like how that's transposed for Stein, just in general. Because good
ends up being the cop. Evil. And good is evil.
Yeah. He transposed them all.
Yeah. But so, yeah, and then, again, the ex-girlfriend ends up somehow putting her hand in the one spot.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, so it's a coincidence, but, you know, you've got to...
I mean, you have to kickstart the story somehow.
Yeah.
But again,
suspend your disbelief.
For me, it just happens so quickly.
Right.
Like, she puts her hand in it, she gets these weird flashes.
And you're not sure what the hell's going on.
And you have no clue what they're about.
Right.
And then they jump into... cop interrogating everyone pretty much telling them to fuck off from both schools, which I thought was pretty cool.
All of the kids.
Yeah. All the kids like, we don't know what you're talking about.
Right. And they all have the same story. Like, same story.
Right. Somehow, without talking to each other. So then, fast forward some time, because like a bunch of shit goes down. They're being chased by a couple of random killers.
Well, they think that it's the new boyfriend, Sunnyvale guys screwing with them still. And so they try and confront them, but they're always gone by the time.
Until the boyfriend's killed.
The boyfriend that they think is perpetrating all of this is like...
Killed right in front of them.
Yeah, which is perfect. Because so the main protagonist goes to the hospital to confront her ex-girlfriend, saying your douchebag boyfriend is harassing all of us, thinking he's funny, and you need to call him off. And her ex is like, what are you talking about? He's been here all day. And she's like, no, he hasn't. And then all of a sudden he is just gutted from behind. It's great.
Right.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay, right.
Run!
Right?
Get the fuck out.
Which, is also fun because her ex-girlfriend's in the hospital and all of a sudden, like, totally fine. Like, let's run. By the way, I'd be fine too.
Right.
Yeah, at that moment.
so then, they proceed some more, and they start being honestly chased by multiple killers.
Right.
Which at this point you kind of don't really know what's going on, other than and this is actually because of the main chick's brother. You do come to find out that everyone that's chasing them are people that have gone nutso and killed people in the past.
So there is the brother knows about, well, they're all taught fairy tales lore about their town. Sarah Fear, she was a witch. She cursed the town. They all think that they're fables. But the brother is convinced that it's true. And then, while she still thinks he's not so, the main protagonist sees that the guy that just tried to kill them is actually a guy that was shot and killed after he serial killed a whole bunch of people at the mall. Right. It's not serial killing, guys.
Massacre.
That's a mass.
It's a mass murder.
Yeah.
So then they go on,
But they realize the dead are coming back to life.
So I think the moment, though, that they actually truly realize what's going on. So again, the dumbass dude meanders off on his own for whatever reason.
He had to pee.
Oh yeah, he had to pee.
He did have a legit reason.
And he
finishes peeing, by the way.
Yeah. And he starts walking off, and he sees, and I thought they actually did this really well. He sees what looks like a little girl sitting there crying.
All huddled up.
And she's all huddled up, so you don't see what she's wearing. You just kind of see, like, the top of her head, and she's, like, crying, and he walks up, and he's like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And she looks up, and at that point, like, the way they did her makeup was so well done.
It really was.
And
you could tell she was like a zombie of some sort. You're like, that's not okay.
Right, and she was humming a song.
Right, which turns out to be a song from the 50s, I think.
Right.
You always hurt the ones you love.
But she ends up attacking him. Now, this is not where he dies.
No, but
he does
it
eventually
does surprise
die,
him.
But
quite a bit.
Yeah, it surprised him. She cuts him.
Yeah.
So he goes to take off to... no, because old girl ends up shooting him. Shooting the little girl.
Because she had a razor. A straight razor that you shave with.
Right, so the main lady in the series...
has stolen a cop's gun.
Stole a cop's gun and ends up shooting the little girl, like her eye pops out and everything.
She's not a little girl, by the way.
No.
She just looks like one.
And which is how they get away from that.
And it's black blood, which is coagulated, which means it was dead.
And they come to this conclusion that, they realize at some point that all of them are actually chasing her. The ex-girlfriend.
Sam, yeah.
Yeah, I think is it
her
Sam?
name's Sam, yeah.
So, this is one of the things I love that this series did. It's very reminiscent of almost every horror movie franchise, I swear, that is out there, where every movie there's a different way to try and stop what's going on.
Right.
So in this one, this is their first step is they realized that one of the girls had survived from an incident that is what all
in the
movie
70s,
2
right.
is about. But they realize, they think that the way she survived was she died first because she did die and they brought her back to life.
Yeah.
So they've schemed up this way to kill off the ex.
Right.
But to bring her back.
Right.
Which didn't pan out the way they had planned it.
Not quite. Not quite. Nothing ever does.
No.
Yeah. But again, it's thanks to the nerd brother, because once he puts together that the chick was humming an oldie and had a straight razor and so on and so forth, he brings out all of the newspaper clippings of all of the mass killings that have happened in Shadyside history and is like, no, that's Ruby. And this killer is this person. And they're coming back from the dead. And it's the curse. And then they start believing. And that's when they see that what do they call it? Camp Nightwing, which was filmed at Camp Crystal Lake, which is amazing.
Well, the camp that Crystal Lake was originally filmed at.
But that's when they put together that there was one survivor from the Camp Nightwing massacre, and that's how she survived. So, right. I mean, like, there is a little bit more research that goes into it, but it does move very, very, very quickly, because the brother has done this research prior to the series even starting. It's something he's kind of obsessed with, which always happens in horror movies. Somebody has the info if you look.
Reminds me of the fat kid from It in the remake who has gone through and done all the research, which in the original it was Mike Hanley that had done it. It was Mike,
yeah.
Which I think is actually more book accurate. I'm pretty sure it was Mike. I don't remember. Ben Hanscom.
Okay. Was
the fat kid.
Right.
In It. But in the remake, for whatever reason, they went with Ben. It's one of the few things that I had a complaint with, because, again, I've read the book.
Right.
And while I do feel like the remakes are more book accurate overall,
they still
take some liberties to piss me off.
They always do. But yeah.
But no. So, basically, they end up drowning her. That's the second. That's the second option.
Right.
The alternative, because they were going to force feed her they were going to force her to OD and then bring her back like that. But she couldn't keep it down.
And then they had to run, and knocked over the rest of the pills, and it just wasn't feasible at that point. But she was already pretty screwed up.
Right. So the main chick ends up drowning Sam.
Right. Her ex, her now girlfriend again.
Yeah, they're back together again.
But basically.
She ends up drowning her.
And then
instead of doing what you do for drowning victims to try and bring them back,
CPR and rolling her on her side and
actual help.
EpiPens.
What was she trying to EpiPen her?
Yeah, she was using a whole bunch of EpiPens for the adrenaline.
And I'm like,
and she was stabbing them in her sternum. Like, if you're gonna use adrenaline, it's got to go into the heart, people. And on that note, EpiPens do not have a long enough needle. I mean, they'll give you a major surge of adrenaline, sure. So, could it help? Possibly. But she stabbed her with 15 of them.
Right.
And then thought about doing CPR.
You probably should have started with CPR, and once you got a heartbeat...
Right. Mouth to mouth, roll her on her side. Because then she didn't even roll her on her... girl has not taken any first aid courses, because she didn't even roll her on her side. So when she started to chuck up the water and the rest of the pills, it's in her face, and then it just wouldn't have worked.
Right.
Yeah, it would messy, very messy.
So when she dies, all the stabby people disappear.
Right. Temporarily.
Well, they make you. It's supposed to make you feel like it's done.
Right.
They disappear.
It's resolved.
And then for the first time, Sam stands up to her mom about her relationship with the main chick that I cannot remember her name for some reason.
Why can't I remember her name?
I don't know.
Yeah, the main protagonist. We'll go with that because for some reason I can't either.
Right. And somehow, like, what cracks me up, she's like, "Oh, I'll see you later." And I'm just thinking, if your mom is mad enough, she's not going to let you leave the house.
Grounded, young lady.
Right.
Right. And now that you live in Sunnyvale. But, she comes over that night.
But, yeah.
And they finally get a call back from the survivor of the 70s massacre at the Camp Massacre. And they had called her to verify that the reason she had survived was dying. And for help. And hadn't heard from her. So, the girls are hanging out together. Everything's fine. And while the main protagonist answers this call from the survivor, her ex goes a little possessed. And...
Well, she's on the phone. And the chick that they called is like, it's not over. Ends. It never ends.
Right.
And at that point, she turns around.
Gets stabbed.
And... Yeah, Sam's standing there staring at her face to face. She looks pale as hell, like she's dead.
She's possessed, a little possessed.
And then they pan the camera down and she's got a knife in her. And I'm thinking to myself she's at first, dead. I'm like, oh, she's dead. Cool, I wonder how this is going to go. And then they wrestle around for a minute. And then all of a sudden, like, it pans down to her brother playing on the computer.
And you think that it's going to be the ex with the knife gets stabby with the brother, and you think everyone's going to be slaughtered. I really thought that's how... By the way...
I'm pretty sure that's how they were
For somebody who foreshadows the hell out of just about everything I see, that was a good twist. Because that was one that I did not call. I really seriously thought the main protagonist and her brother were toast.
So then what makes it even better is the main protagonist and her brother goes back upstairs and she has Sam hogtied with the phone cord.
Right. For those of you that are too young to have had one of those really long
corded phones,
they were handy for something. But then she goes, Sam isn't feeling like herself. Best line in the entire thing. Fucking epic. It was great.
And they end up taking her over to
the survivor
chick's house. And then that's where episode 1 cuts off.
Well, she's... yeah. And then... Was that or was it the preview for the next one? It kind of rolls into it. But, she takes her over and she's like, why the hell did you bring this chick here? And then she's showing her memory book from the camp.
I think
the year of the camp.
And I still think that's the preview though.
Okay.
All right, so basically
we took a short break.
Yeah, we took a short break. So basically first movie, solid acting.
Solid soundtrack.
Hell of a soundtrack.
Yeah.
Decent story.
Right.
Great setup for a full story.
Correct. After 2 hours, though, don't get me wrong, because it is a mini series. It was fine, but had they been released in theater, I would have left very unsatisfied, because it is a full length movie, time wise.
Right.
But like we said, we had to watch it a second time to really get into it and be like, because I remember saying after watching it that first time, I don't feel like this does R.L. Stine justice. And then we watched it a second time and I was like, I might be wrong.
Right.
I might be wrong. We'll have to see where it goes.
And the SFX gore deaths, pretty good.
Right.
Again, girl's eye getting popped out was really nice. And then the bread cutter scene is fantastic.
Right.
Because you had and they made it so dramatic when it was happening to the point where you felt they might save her.
Right. Well, or that it might be flipped around and she might send the dead killer through it.
Right.
I was kind of thinking that might be the way it was. No.
So that's the first movie.
Right. And it had humor.
Right.
So the second movie...
So then the second one...
is 78.
So...
Camp Nightwing.
It basically starts off still present day.
In 94.
94.
Which is present day.
Right. But, so it starts back, it starts off in 94. The kids get over to the survivor chick's house.
Right. And she pulls out her scrapbook.
Yeah. She pulls out her scrapbook. And this is just, we're going over the story first here. She pulls out a little scrapbook, pulls out a picture, throws it down, and it's a picture of her and her sister. First day of camp at Camp Nightwing.
And she says 1 week later, she was dead.
Nightwing?
Wing, yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Like bats.
Like Batman's sidekick.
Right.
Turned self-vigilante. And so this story goes a little bit further into the lore. Now, here is going to be my overall complaint with the series, and I want to get this out of the way now, is they show a lot of killers in glimpses, but some are rarely used.
Right.
One of which, and this was, in this one they specifically showed, it was the kid with the baseball bat.
Bat Baby was barely showed.
Right, and I think he only made one more appearance towards the very end of the third movie, but still was not even relevant.
Really, yeah. You
had one guy that was drowning people.
Which is very reminiscent of Jason.
Well, no, because there's another guy that's more reminiscent of Jason that actually has a sack on his head.
Well, but like the Jason that pops out of the water. But again, yeah, like there's quite a few killers that are supposedly part of the group that can be raised from the dead.
And they're rarely used.
And there's very little backstory on them. Because
right.
for some of them, there is.
Right.
Like the chick that we mentioned before that has the straight razor that hums old tunes, you actually learn her backstory.
In this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there are several killers, like we were saying, that just...
They're just kind of gratuitous. A glimpse,
and they kind of show up a little bit.
They're just kind of gratuitous,
and then they're
yeah.
So, I don't really feel like there's a whole lot to go in depth with the second movie. They definitely slowed the story down and paced it better.
It was amazing, but again, it's backstory.
Right.
It is the survivor's story of her time at camp in 78. And what happened there. So...
Right. And so in this one... like, the one of the sisters, which is like the main protagonist of this movie, she gets picked on by everybody. Nobody likes her.
Right.
Even her own sister doesn't like her. Nobody can fucking stand her.
Right.
And the first time you actually see her... she's being chased by one of the other kids.
She's being bullied. No, she's being chased by a group of them.
Was it a group of them?
It was a group.
Oh. And
it was all led by the one popular chick.
Right.
And they were all Sunnyvalers that were bullying and chasing her, and she's a shady sider.
Right. They get to the point where it almost feels like they're going to attempt to actually kill her. When all of a sudden, Nick Good steps in.
And he's a
Sunnyvaler, but he breaks it up.
And he is the son of the current sheriff.
Right. And... which he's also in the first movie.
As the sheriff.
As the sheriff.
Because, again, it's...
and his brother's the mayor.
20 years later.
Right.
Yeah.
But, they kind of build up this almost slow romance between the two of them.
Yeah, but it's kind of Romeo and Juliet-esque in terms of he's from the good side, she's from the bad side. But she eventually falls for it because nobody else likes her. And he says that he does, and he likes Stephen King and all of the things that people think she's weird for.
Right.
Yeah.
And at some point... one of the kids goes fucking nuts and just starts killing people.
Starting with his best friend.
And this is where, as far as killers between the three movies go, this is where I feel this movie is the weakest in. Just because he kills everybody the same way, So after you see it happen the first couple times,
right,
you're just kind of like, like he hatchets people in the head. He'll run up, hatchet somebody, run off, hatchet other people, and at some point you're just kind of like, okay.
Again, though, it's reminiscent of horror tropes, which is what it's going for. But the nice thing about this is not only does it give the backstory of the survivor and what she went through at camp, but it adds more to the whole rift between Shadyside and Sunnyvale and how the
camp actually
totally
plays divergent. The kids. The camp plays them against each other too as well.
There's color wars against them. Like it's, like we said, it starts with this group of Sunnyvalers, which are supposed to be the good kids, the rich kids, but of course they're the snobby kids too, chasing down a Shadysider, calling her bad seed. They call her a witch. You think she ends up underneath the actual hanging tree. And in the lore, that is where Sarah Fear, who founded Shadyside, the witch, was hung.
And supposedly buried.
And also supposedly where she set down her curse. And you learn more about the curse in terms of it's to curse Shadysiders and they won't escape from Shadyside. They're always going to be bad. Yada, yada, yada. And it was a curse for hanging her. Kind of thing. And
in the legend of the curse, there's a saying that's a part of it where they talk about reuniting the hand with the body.
Yeah, she chops off her hand, supposedly, to give a sacrifice to Satan to have this curse on Shadyside. And it's as long as my hand is free from my body, like my hand is upon you all kind of concept.
Right. And so this is one of my favorite things. I was right about something that her and Ralph were wrong about in this movie.
He likes when he's right and I'm not.
Well, because her and I are so good at predicting the ends of things.
That's true.
We actually had completely different thoughts on how it was going to happen. And I can actually tell you the reasoning behind mine was I felt like the actress they chose to play her looked more like...
Right.
the chick telling the story than the other one did.
Okay, so he's talking about the one that was bullied at the beginning, that's the weirdo.
So
the reason is, for me, is she was going by a nickname at camp, Ziggy, and her sister's name was Cindy, and the survivor is referred to as CJ.
Now, also...
So, I was Cindy, CJ is what I was thinking.
While I was right, it was also by luck. Because, so what ends up happening is both of them, towards the end, are trying to put the hand...
Reunite the skeleton hand.
Reunite the skeleton hand with the body. But when they go to dig up the hole where the body is, they just find a rock that says Sarah Fear was here.
It's something along those lines. So they find the hand. They have established that it needs to be reunited with the body. But yeah, when they go to the hanging tree and dig up where her grave supposedly was, she's not there.
Right.
And that's when all hell breaks loose and all the killers are there on them.
All the killers have them circled.
Yeah. Sisters are reunited at that point. They've
gone through their trials,
their differences.
So they both start to just take off running in opposite directions. They both get killed.
Well, the oldest sister tries to give Ziggy the ability to run, but she turns because her sister is sacrificing herself for her and ends up getting stabbed anyway.
Right. So they both end up dying. And they end up reviving...
Nick Good.
Yeah, Nick Good ends up reviving the sister that's picked on, because he does care for her.
Yeah.
It is established, and even in the third one, he does like her.
Like, romantically.
Right, romantically. Yeah. And so when they revive her, he actually says it's the other sister. He changes their names.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know where the significance in that is.
But that's why I was tripped up. I was like, I don't. Maybe because Ziggy was getting in trouble already and Cindy had all those perfect grades and because she was trying to get out of Shady Side by being perfect. I have no idea. But nonetheless, trades him off.
But yeah, he trades him off and I guess she kept it.
Yeah, it probably because...
But they don't even really look alike. That's why I don't understand.
Yeah, one's a redhead, one's...
Right, that's why I didn't understand the name switch. When he did it, I was just kind of like... Cool, nice little twist. I was right, but for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
But why?
Right. Well,
and
they never have to rewatch that.
And they never really went into it.
I know,
either.
But maybe because one of their names was written on the rock. So that's the other thing that you find out during that is they, in all of their hiding and running from the killers and trying to reunite the hand and so on and so forth, the girls and their friends discover that there's a whole bunch of hidden networks underneath the camp.
Right.
And they're from colonial times. And that's where they find basically the carving that is the ritualistic chamber for the sacrifice to the devil and so on and so forth. But it's also where they find the skeleton hand. But there's a whole bunch of carved names on the rock walls around the sacrificial chamber, and they're all the people that have died and all the killers' names.
Right.
And so basically they just realized that the significance is, hey, all the killers' names are here. If your name is on this wall, you're doomed. And so I don't remember if her name had been carved in the stone. Maybe that's why he switched the names. Either way, not really gone into... There's no depth to why he did it. So, she survives.
Right. And then it goes back to present day.
At the very end of the second movie. It goes back to 94.
And she explains, she's like, do you still know where the hand is? Because we found the body.
The main protagonist from 94 tells the survivor, who is Ziggy, she's like, so you know where the hand is. You found the hand back then. We found the body. So now we can reunite them. So again,
and
you have the second way of trying to save them.
And we find out, if I remember correctly, the hand is still under the tree.
The hanging tree.
Which is planted in the middle of the mall.
At that point, it used to be part of the camp. Yeah.
Yeah. And she ends up getting the hand. She goes to take it to the body. She digs up the body, and as she puts the hand onto the body, she gets this flash.
Much like her ex-girlfriend's.
Much like her ex-girlfriend. However, hers ends a little bit differently. Her ends with her seeing through Sarah Fier's eyes.
Which, I'm guessing, is because the protagonist is somehow a descendant.
Well, she bled on it. She bled on the hand.
So did her ex.
Right, but her ex wasn't there to put the hand on the body.
Right, but...
Because here's the thing, it would have been impossible for her to be a descendant.
Not if the dad went on. I mean, so...
You got to think of it like this. In times like that, he would have been thought of as a parent of a witch.
Right.
And nobody would have messed with him.
Right.
Honestly, he would have been more likely to be killed off as well.
True.
I think it's because, like I said, like she bled on it, which caused them to actually start chasing her.
Which is what happened to her ex-girlfriend from the car crash and bleeding on it.
Right.
Originally.
But I think a part of this whole lore was, in order to see what actually happened, you had to combine the hand with the body.
Okay. All right.
So
that's how 78 ends.
But that's how it ends, is she sees herself through Sarah Fier's eyes. Now.
And that's all you see, is all of a sudden it's colonial times and you can tell that she is Sarah Fier, and then...
It cuts out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, to be 100% honest, of the three movies, this is actually my favorite all-around movie. I feel like it was the best paced. I feel like the acting was just as on point as the first movie. I think the soundtrack was just as excellent as the first movie.
Yeah, for the late 70s, it was fantastic.
I do... My only complaint is the lack of... not even originality. The lack of diversity in the kills.
Right. I mean, I'm going to agree with you. As a even standalone, let's say, type movie, it was far better. Now, is it a trope? Of course.
That also might play into it for me as well.
Very much like Camp Crystal Lake.
It's like a classic slasher.
It is. 80s slasher, too.
Right.
Soundtrack and everything, except for, obviously, it's much better production in terms of costumes and so on and so forth, because it was done recently.
You're going to see another weird cut here. I got to go get Mountain Dew. I'll be right back. All right. So then we get into
the third one.
Tonight's movie, which is Part 3, 1666, which coincides with the Salem Witch Hunt.
Right. And 666.
666. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a perfect ending to a trilogy.
And explanation. Ending and beginning.
One of the things I loved that they did is how many parallels of what was going on back then was also what was going on with the characters in the original 1990 whatever. They
used the same actors and actresses from both previous movies to play the colonials in the town. And a lot of them had the same characteristics, were part of the same family unit, had the same outside relationships, like our main protagonist, Sarah Fear, is in love with the pastor's daughter, who is the same chick that is her ex-girlfriend in the first one.
Now, this is also where my one complaint's going to come from with this one. I do not think the main protagonist plays a good colonial character. She could not stick to the accent that was used. I noticed that she did fall out of it quite often. And the only reason that stands out is because everyone else did such a good job doing it.
That's kind of true.
And I mean everyone nailed the accent and stuck with it.
The antiquated English.
Even the pastor's daughter, which ended up being the girlfriend.
Right.
She did an excellent job with it, but the main character just, I felt, could not grasp it in the way that everyone else could.
I feel like some of it was the way her lines were written.
Like
the wording, because, again, it's antiquated English. It's not necessarily an accent per se, but I feel like because she had so much more to say that the writing kind of fell out. Because as far as her acting in terms of showing the emotions, the fear, just everything, she did a very good job.
Right.
But the other thing that I really liked is because this is set in 1666, and what it is a really long flashback that our main protagonist from the entire thing that started in 94 is seeing now that she is touching the complete corpse of Sarah Fear, is occasionally it flashes to what was the real face of Sarah Fear.
Right.
So they don't just throw our main protagonist back and make her the main character without showing us that no, she's really just seeing through this woman's eyes, but there was somebody else originally.
Right. So a lot of the parallels that happen, our main protagonist falls in love with the pastor's daughter.
Right. She's a lesbian.
So they have their things going on, and it's played by the same two people from the from the original movie, 1994.
And they did a really fantastic job with making it feel legit, like forbidden and legit.
So then
she has the same
brother,
same father, except for you don't see him in 94, but you see that he's a drunk and so on and so forth. He's a widow, and all the same parallels. the girlfriend is the pastor's daughter, but she is the same mother that you have seen in 94.
Right, twat.
Yeah.
But time period, I understand.
Right.
If you think about it, as much as it, like, we look back at it now and detest the way people acted and things like that, if you try to put yourself in a place where you're raised in that environment,
it makes complete sense.
I can definitely see why she acted the way that she did.
Right. Well, and the whole town eventually, I can see why. But it was sickening.
It didn't make us any less mad.
Oh no, it was sickening, especially the douchebag that has tried to sexually
assault the pastor's daughter.
Well, he also tried with Sarah Fear earlier. But yeah, he goes after the pastor's daughter a couple of times. He goes after Sarah Fear a couple times. And when they rebuke him and finally she punches him in front of everybody.
And then makes fun of him.
Yeah, and then, of course, when the opportunity comes, he's like, you know what? I saw them fornicating with the devil. They made me watch. They were naked. And it's like, no, that's your fantasy, dude. Like, ugh. But again, it is how a lot of the witch trials progressed, and it's sickening. And then, of course, all the men in town were like, oh yeah, I saw them naked too. And it's like, no, dudes.
Well, I loved the slow progression of this part of the story.
Right.
It felt the most natural progression-wise.
That's true.
Because it started off as a night where people were just trying to have fun.
The young crowd, dancing, singing.
Sarah, and before the actual event happens, Sarah and a couple of her friends end up raiding this widow's house.
That was exiled
from the group.
Learned from the indigenous peoples all the medicines and stuff, and she ends up having a book
that Sarah ends up reading out of. She legit reads out loud, which they did a really good job of throwing me a screwball, because I thought that that's what started everything.
I didn't. He was like, no, she read it aloud, and I was like, no, she didn't conjure anything. All of this crap is happening before any curse from her, and so somebody else is doing this. Who's doing this? And then my next thought was...
Well, I thought they were going to... Honestly, I thought they were going to play her out to actually be a witch.
Nah,
I thought the conjuring was going to be what caused her to turn into a witch slowly.
See, I had my suspicions the whole time. Because she takes the piglet at the very beginning. She walks through town. Everybody says hi to her. And she takes the piglet to Solomon. And he's this guy who lives outside of town.
He lives on the edge of town. I wouldn't say out on the outside.
But he keeps saying, no, where I'm at, like, it's going to take off. Like, I know there's something out here that's better than where everybody else is living. And she's like, it's okay. We all fall to shadows sometimes, blah, blah, blah. She's very giving to him. Her dad is trying to marry them together, yada, yada. And I just had this feeling. I was like, you know what? He's supposedly on down times, and he is trying to show everybody that he can be successful without them.
I was looking at it from a completely different perspective, because when they were panning up going to his house, you see that there were 2 graves there, which through conversation you find out one was his
wife and daughter, wasn't it?
I think it was his wife and daughter.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking the way that he was acting actually felt almost morose,
like he was a widow on the edge of town just trying to cope.
So that's how I took the character. That's why I at first didn't think nothing of it. But
I thought he was sus from the beginning.
So she finds this book. She reads from it, and then they get chased off by the crazy lady.
Right.
And then everything that happens during the night happens. They have their little dance by the fire, because they were there to raid to find these hallucinogenic berries.
Right. all the young'uns are having fun. They're in a huge group, campfire.
They all eat the berries. They're all dancing.
And then this guy tries to sexually assault the girls again.
Right.
And that's when she punches him.
She's like, how's this for a kiss? Wham!
It was
punches him right in the mouth.
Good right hook. And then the girls take off together, like on the edge of where everybody is, and they have their little dalliance, as they call it.
Yeah, I had
make out session.
What the fuck that meant?
A dalliance is an affair.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, they were doing way more than just that.
Right.
But then they realize somebody's watching.
They hear, like, twigs crack, and yeah.
So they take off, and I love how they played all this out later, by the way.
Right.
When they go through how... Anyways. So
then it's basically the next day.
The next day, everything starts to go to shit.
Like,
everything.
apples are rotting. Bread is molding. Like... But the first thing that really happens is the pastor's daughter, the girlfriend, comes and knocks on the door and is like, something's wrong with my dad, who is the pastor. So Sarah Fear goes over there, and he is sitting on the bed muttering to himself. And you can tell, because we've watched the first two, with the fly buzzing around his head, that he is possessed and something is about to go down.
Right.
But they're trying to read
this
scripture.
One didn't flip as quick.
No.
Either.
No.
This one seems to have taken its time.
He built, yeah.
But so like he's kind of muttering, doing his whole thing, and they're going through town, and then like all of a sudden,
the girls are wondering if it was their dalliance that caused this. Like, it's 1666. Like, they played it off very well in terms of what they would have been taught back then. Like, did we bring this evil into being, this, that? And the mom comes home, and apparently Sarah Fear is not welcome because the mom does suspect.
Word got around town.
Yeah, so she kicks Sarah Fear out in front of everyone in town. And there's mutterings, and they all know that the girls screwed around. Yeah.
Right. And then among other things that happen before shit really goes down, they find her dog.
In the well. Poisoning the water. It's dead, obviously. Their
the
sow
most
that
disgusting thing
had just had a litter.
In the
ate
entire
all
movie.
Of her babies.
Yeah. And
she is mowing down on bones, and you can hear them popping, and then Sarah's like, get me the axe.
Yeah, Sarah's like, you gotta die.
It's just over. It's over.
Right. But then it eventually pans over to the church. And this I actually thought was really well done. Really creepy. Really cool, though.
Right.
Everybody's trying to break into the church. They're banging on the door because they know their kids are in there.
Well, yeah, Sarah Fear runs up and she's like, what is going on? And they find out that the pastor has taken all the children
into the church
and locked them into the church with him. And everyone's trying to get in. So she has this guy from the edge of town, Solomon, that she thinks is her friend, who seems like the only level-headed person, if a bit morose. And he helps to break the door down.
Break the door down.
And then he goes in by himself.
He's like, make sure nobody gets in.
And they all get in. By the way, that's a spoiler.
Really
but,
bad.
Oh my lord.
He goes in, and I love the scene because he's walking slowly down the aisle. And you just see the heads of the kids sitting, but they're all sitting like this.
They look like they've been drugged. But they're all sitting in the pews, just normal, just kind of.
And you hear this tap consistently. It's just a constant tap.
And the pastor is muttering.
And yeah, the pastor's muttering again. He's standing up at the pulpit. And as he's walking down, you see this pile of eyeballs and other gook.
I think it's all eyeballs but it looks like entrails.
And they even zoom in on like the pastor's hand that's tapping, and he's got this hook.
Right.
That's just sitting there tapping on the thing.
And he's like, I can see it all now. I can see it clearly. And you're like, oh.
And They zoom in on his face.
Clearly now my eyes are gone.
They zoom in on his face, and his eyes are missing. Right. And I'm like, oh, those are the eyeballs in the pile. And then all the fucking family rushes in. All the families come in. And
start screaming.
That's when the camera pans and you actually see the kids. All the kids' eyes are missing. And they're all dead. All the kids are dead.
Yeah, the pastor's still alive, but the kids are dead.
Which I was like, well, that's fucked up.
That was great.
And then the pastor actually tries to attack
Sarah Fear.
But gets stopped by Solomon.
Yeah,
Solomon ends up killing the pastor.
And that's when the town has their meeting, and the wannabe rapist claims that the girls are witches, the two, pastor's daughter and Sarah Fear, because they wouldn't get with him. And that's when all the guys jump on the same ship and say that they saw the same things, they were fornicating with the devil, yada, yada,
Obviously lying.
Except for Solomon. And he's the one that's like, do you guys have proof? This is crazy, blah, blah, blah. So you still think but you still think he's on Sarah Fear's side. He plays it off extremely well. And
Here's the thing. He was always.
Well, he was,
on
but
Sarah
for his
Fear's
own
side.
For his own reasons.
But
you don't know that yet.
Sarah kind of fucks him over on that, which, don't get me wrong, he fucked her over first. But had she played along, she probably would have been fine.
Yeah, but her girlfriend wouldn't have been.
True.
So anyway, the town goes to hunt the two girls, and Hannah, the pastor's daughter, gets caught, but Sarah does not. So Sarah sneaks back into where they're keeping her girlfriend, her lover, whatever, and finds out that they're going to hang her. And she's like, you know what? If they want a witch, I will become a witch because I can't lose you. And this is basically bullshit. So she runs back to the widow in the woods where she found the book. Finds bloody handprints on the box where the book was. The book is missing. And when she turns around, she falls and finds the widow is dead.
She's dead.
She's had her throat cut. So she runs to Solomon's. And Solomon is like, wait, slow down. What'd you say? Oh, I believe you. Trust me, I believe you. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure you do. And then he hides her because the townsfolk have come to check his place, and he covers for her because, again, he's got his own reasons. And in the midst of hiding to make sure that the townsfolk can't find her, she finds an opening to the caverns below, which, like we mentioned, in 78 in the camps, the kids found, and that's where they found the hand and the sacrificial chamber and the walls and so on and so forth. So she finds that, and that's when she realizes Solomon's the one all along that cursed the little colony town of Union, which is what it started as. And he has the book, so that means that he killed the widow. And
so this is also where we learn whoever casts this spell, so to speak, every so many decades
has to offer one victim.
Has to offer a victim. And what happens is that victim
name gets scratched on the wall.
Their name gets scratched on the wall. They kill people until they're dead.
Right.
And the person that the person or family that casts the spell will always be successful.
Yeah.
Or be the leader, as they say.
Well, I mean, power, whatever it is that they wanted.
Right.
So.
And this is where shit starts to.
But it's an interesting twist because they themselves aren't really paying for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because all they have to do is state a single name. That person ends up getting possessed. So Solomon in 1666 picked the pastor. That's why the pastor goes crazy. He ends up killing all the kids. Now, Solomon can't control who they kill.
No.
Which is kind of the downside, but his family was safe.
Right. And they also do seem to go more specifically after Shady Siders.
But not then.
But not
because
then.
Because it hadn't been split into
right.
Union was the town, and Solomon was the only person kind of on the outside. Well, the widow was... whatever. The chick with the book originally was too, and he killed her to get the book, so, you know. Right. But, nonetheless, that's when you find out all about that. You're finding out that Sarah had absolutely nothing to do with witchcraft. It was bullshit. And he finds her down there.
Yeah. And then, like, they have a little chase sequence.
Well, he's like, look, I was tired of struggling, and everybody wants power, and look what you could have. You know, why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
And so on and so forth. And then she's like, he kind of comes onto her a little bit, not drastically, but he's trying to sway her to his point of view, and she's like, no, I'm nothing like you. And that's when the chase scene in these caverns starts. But she is kind of like him because she was contemplating getting the book.
That's where I had the issue in this part of the movie.
Right.
She's like, I'm nothing like you. And I almost went bullshit because you were trying to do the same thing.
Except for, I think...
For different reasons.
Yeah, I think in her brain, it wasn't about power. It was about saving her girlfriend. And she thought she was doing it for love.
Wrong is wrong.
Yeah, you know... Whatever. The townspeople were wrong. Granted, it was the times and so on and so forth, but you know.
Right.
So, chase scene, anyway, she tries to climb up this escape hatch, basically, but it's like way up, and she's got to climb up
I got
rocks.
so nervous. He
has a problem with fingernails getting ripped off. So, anyway, you knew, because movie tropes for horror movies, you knew that he was going to catch up with her, and he was going to yank her down before she could get through, which he does.
Right.
Luckily, she keeps her fingernails, at least, as far as we know, until she stabs him. I mean, I think that is the point, or like right before that he confesses that he loves her. Because he does tell her that he loves her, and so that is the twist. That is why he was on her side the entire time. He really legit did like her. He thought that her uniqueness and will and so on and so forth were actually quite attractive.
But unfortunately for him, her heart
she was a lesbian. Yeah. Not even just with... I mean, she was in love, legit, but she also wasn't interested in what he had to offer.
Right.
So he wasn't going to sway her. And then, yeah. So, either way, she stabs him in the gut, and he cuts her hand off.
He did not do it on purpose, though.
No, they were wrestling with the
he actually
knife.
Just went to kill her.
They were wrestling with the knife. And
when he went to go stab her, she put her arm up, and it went right through. And as she pulled away, it cut through the
and then it was
one
like
half,
flopping.
And it was like dangling. And when she went to go pick herself up, it came completely off.
Yeah.
It was gone.
So, anyway, you find out that is how she lost her hand. It wasn't that she sacrificed it in order to curse the town or anything. It was a struggle with the person that actually did curse the town.
So then she runs away. She runs through all the caverns. She eventually...
She does escape.
Sneaks off into this little spot where she crawls up underneath the floorboards. She kicks up through the floorboards, which leads up to...
Right behind the pulpit.
Right behind the pulpit in the church.
Right.
And she stumbles out the church, and the first thing she sees is the pastor's daughter sitting in front of the well. In chains.
They're about to take her out to hang her.
And I feel like if she would have spoken up...
But yeah, she had already been clobbered on the head. I don't think so, because think about the times. 1666.
Oh, they would have bullied the man.
Exactly.
Over anyone. But... I feel like she'd have had a better chance than just being quiet.
No, I think that's exactly why she confessed at the end.
Right. So...
Wouldn't.
But yeah, so she's standing there and she's like looking at the pastor's daughter and kind of smiling a little bit.
Well, happy, relieved to see her,
but then...
Dazed as... Yeah.
But then, what's his face?
Solomon
comes from behind, grabs her by the back of the head, and he's like, I found the witch!
Right.
I found her!
So they take them to the hanging tree, and they're like, confess, confess, you know, that old spiel. And she kind of looks at the pastor's daughter and realizes that she can save her lover if she confesses and she says that it was all her in the first place. And the townsfolk already view her as a little bit different because she's ballsy, has willpower, and her dad is a widower, so on and so forth. So she confesses, she says it was all her, she bewitched the pastor's daughter, blah, blah, blah. So they actually do let the pastor's daughter go and hang her. But right before she's hung, she looks at Solomon and
Solomon's the one that hangs her.
Well, she looks at him and she's like, I'm not going to let you get away with this. The truth will come out at some point. You know, every life you take, everything you do, like, it won't be right now, but I will come back, basically. Right. So you find out that basically she is not the curse that is affecting all the Shadysiders to the present day in 94 at all. Right. She is the first victim of, well, I mean, other than the kids of the town and the pastor, but like real victim. So Solomon, turns out his last name is Good. And that's one thing that you do find out. And in 94, the sheriff is Nick Good. He was also when he was in his teens, he was at the Camp Nightwing that was the one that befriended the survivor, who was the Shadysider, the weird one, the one that he revived. That was Nick Good. But you find out that the first son in every Good generation since Solomon has been inducted into the rites of this devil worship and sacrificing someone every so often. Because I feel like Nick Good did it actually relatively frequently. Because there was like a whole...
I think Nick did it to keep covering shit up.
I think so. Yeah. I think he had his main big moment and then, like, yeah, he'd send the killers after certain people.
But, so they actually get back to the present day after all this. And, of course, the main protagonist realizes what's going on. She sees cop lights come up. Her brother's still up by the car. Nick comes out and is asking him where her sister is.
Pulls the gun.
She runs up, grabs him, pulls him down.
Yeah.
They end up basically luring him into the woods and then running
Stealing
back,
his cop car.
Getting his car and taking off.
Right. And then they run to the survivors and they have to explain to her that this...
The survivor from the second movie.
Yeah, that this guy that she thought was on her side this whole time...
Really was not.
And actually is the reason her sister ended up dying. And so then they come up with this plan of how they're going to lure in all the killers that are now going to be after our main protagonist, Deanna or something like that. And also, you can't kill the devil, but you can kill the person that made a pact with him. So how they're going to kill Nick Good and end the curse.
Right. And they also end up picking up this janitor dude who kind of cameos throughout the entire series.
Right. He's definitely in the first one.
Right. He was arrested in the first one and framed by Nick, as well as he works in the mall.
Right.
But they end up picking him up.
Going to the mall.
And they all go to the mall, mix the main protagonist's blood with things, spray it all over the place. They build this elaborate plan to drag them into separate rooms.
Or separate storefronts where the janitor they picked up has the keys to the security gate so that they can trap the killers in. Anyway, it's all to lure them with the main protagonist's blood, which is what they're hunting.
Right.
Get them all in the same place. Get them away from...
Right. And then once Nick comes in, they're gonna get the blood on him and have the killers go after him.
Right.
Which actually starts to work off.
He gets stabbed in the back, which is helpful.
Right.
Works out really great until he grabs Ziggy.
But, well, the lead up to it was really well done too, because he walks in and the girl that he saved is the one sitting by the hanging tree. in the middle of the mall.
Again, to be fair, it was interesting because that is one of the reincarnations that wasn't exact, but it was well played, because most of them are reincarnated into basically kind of characters of themselves from 1666. However, in this reincarnation, instead of Nick Good being in love with our main protagonist,
right,
he is actually in love with the survivor from the first camp, which is Ziggy.
Right.
So, works out. But yeah, she's the one that he walks straight up to.
But yeah, they have this almost kind of, like, you could tell he cares, and I actually thought he acted that out really well.
Yeah, he did.
Because he was surprised that she was out of the house. But
She's
not in, like...
agoraphobic at that point, yeah.
Right. And he gets, like, real close to her, and he's talking to her, and then all of a sudden, like, she drops the blood on his head through
very
Carrie-like bucket.
Yep.
And then she takes off.
Right. The killers do come after... Well, I mean, he grabs her at some point. He's like, if I die, she dies too. And then he gets stabbed in the back. So he lets go of her. Everything is working out, except for then one of the girls... I think it's still Ziggy.
It's still Ziggy because she has the blood on her now.
Right.
So they kind of start coming for her, which gives Nick a chance to run away.
Well, Deanna cuts her hand to give for fresh blood for them to all turn to her.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, they all turn to her and leave Nick alone. Gives him time to run away. The rest of the group all go and hide behind a security gate. Deanna takes off after Nick because the killers are hunting her anyway.
Right.
They all get the great idea to use the rest of the blood, and they spray the killers with her blood so that the killers turn on each other. Deanna's hunting Nick down, and again, he has grates and stuff within the mall that still connect to those caverns that are underneath Shady Side this whole time. It's all been built on the original settlement of Union that then became Camp Nightwing, that then became Shady Side in the mall. It's all the same thing. So she's seeing flashbacks, which actually helped her, of all of the stuff that she saw from 1666. So she kind of has a little idea of where she's going, of the history, what happened there.
Now, while all this is going on, the other people that came with her are trapped in one of the stores with all the killers sitting outside, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? And they realize they still have some blood left. So they come up with this great idea, which actually works out really well starting off. Where they spray all the killers with the blood and have them attack each other.
Right.
Which I thought was
hunting
really...
by blood.
Right.
Inventive, yeah.
Which I thought was really fun. We actually got to see the killers go at each other for a little bit.
Except for not all the killers are on the scene yet.
Right.
And the ex-girlfriend gets loose. That was the big...
Right.
Yeah.
So they all end up killing each other off. And then all of a sudden we see...
Sam run by.
Did she run by before or after the other one showed up?
She ran by first. Yeah.
So I guess she breaks free.
And she's possessed, so she's hunting Deanna, her girlfriend, and...
Right.
Yeah.
So she runs, she starts to follow him, and then more killers come in.
Because, see, Sam getting loose was what caused the brother, who is behind the security screen, they would have been fine, to say, we have to help my sister. Like, now there's more on the scene. There was like 4 more or something that showed up.
Right. Which a couple of them are ones we hadn't seen yet.
The baby basher.
Other than through quick snippets of past things. But the
Ruby.
The kid with the bat. Mm-hmm. Ruby, which was the chick from the first one with the razor blade. The drowning dude.
Right.
Showed up. Actually, I think it was just the 3 of them.
Okay. Well, so they've run out of blood, so they can't do the same thing that they did last time. All of the killers that had killed themselves are starting to get back up.
And reheal.
So they go out with guns, legit guns that they stole from the sheriff's car. But they run out of ammo.
Actually, I think those guns they got off the cops that tried to stop them earlier.
Oh, possibly.
We didn't talk about that, but...
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of... But they shoot And obviously, some of the killers go down and will regenerate. Some of them don't go down.
Like the kid with the bat. He had some sort of porcelain mask on that was basically deflecting the bullets.
So,
but
they're getting screwed.
Right.
But, you know, so they're still fighting. But then Sarah, or Deanna in this, is hunting Nick down in the caverns. And her girlfriend is hunting her because she's possessed. She ends up knocking her girlfriend out after getting attacked. And unfortunately, she rolls away from her unconscious girlfriend right into Nick's shoes. And he tries to attack her with her own knife. And as he
does stab her.
Yeah, as he is just about to kill her, she puts the hand that she had bloodied already straight onto this weird heart thing that was part of the whole sacrifice.
She didn't put her hand in it. I
thought it was her hand with the blood.
No, she grabbed his hand and put it into it.
Oh, okay.
And that's why he seen the visions.
Got it.
His eyes started flashing and he started seeing a bunch of shit.
All the people who had died.
Right.
All the innocent people who had died, not the people that his family tree had sacrificed.
Right.
Yeah. For 300 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And it ends with him seeing Fear.
Sarah Fear, yeah.
Who then stabs him, which then it actually, I loved how they did this. It was almost the reverse of what had happened throughout most of the first part.
Right.
It actually ended up being the main protagonist. So he's seen her as Sarah Fear.
Right. And she reiterates her whole, like, thing that she had said to his ancestor before she was hung, which was, all the lives you take, all that, I'll be there with you, blah, blah, blah. And then she stabs him through the eye. And, yeah, as it pans away, it is actually Deanna, or whatever her name is. And you can tell that she's kind of almost been a little possessed by Sarah Fear, too, because she sort of starts and is like, this was her purpose, but she also never wanted to kill anyone.
Right.
So he dies, and luckily for the people upstairs still trying to survive these never-ending killers, they all kind of like poof.
They Thanos dust themselves.
Right. And she wakes her girlfriend up, who is gonna have one hell of a headache. And
probably nightmares for years.
Oh, that too. And they both need showers desperately. Anyway, on their way out of the caverns, they have to go through this other way, and Deanna remembers from her flashbacks of Sarah Fear how to get out, but she thinks that they would be coming up in Solomon's house. Well, they do. Turns out that Sheriff Good, Nick Good, lives in like this pristine mansion, palatial mansion, and over the fireplace is the 300 years of, it's the generational family tree of, you know, all the firstborns that have sacrificed town members. But they're in Sunnyvale. They're on the good side where all of it prospered, and so on and so forth. But yeah.
So then they walk out of the house, and it's great because right when they walk out of the house, lo and behold, across the street is where Nick's brother, who is the mayor, lives, and he goes to back out of the driveway, and as he's backing out, gets hit by a trash truck.
Right. And he backs out super freaking fast, and he gets sidelined. And then there's news clips of like...
But then they start going to news clips where Nick's apparently the Sunnyside killer.
Well, he's labeled as a serial killer. Like, there's all this information that's coming out about the sheriff. It never was any of these other people's fault. He was framing them. So that's actually good because it means that the memories of the people from Shady Side are kind of cleared up. All the people who died. Right. The mayor... Well... Nick Good's family is all claiming that they had no clue what was which is...
Some of them might not have. There's potential.
It's potential. And then, you know, she meets her girlfriend in the woods, which is actually where Sarah Fear's body was. And the moss witch moss has grown everywhere, and but I sat there the whole time. I was like, they leave the sacrificial chamber without that goddamn book. I was like, who's going to take the book? You know it's going to happen, and it happened.
Here's my problem with how it ended. I mean, it is the first time I have ever seen an ending where the town believes everything. Because you kind of have to if you're going to label him a serial killer.
Right.
That never happens. Maybe they could have pinned a couple of the murders on him. But...
Well, but here's the thing. They never really explained how it came about.
Right.
Or came to light anyway. And so, as well as they did with everything else in the series, I would have liked to see that wrapped up just a little bit better in terms of how it came about that he was even known to have done anything versus they just find the sheriff dead in the caves, you know, because that's what I thought was going to happen. They were just going to find him dead in the caves.
And I thought it was going to end with a parallel to Sarah's end. I actually thought the main protagonist was going to die.
Or go to jail.
And sacrifice herself in order to make sure
her
girlfriend was going to be able to live on. So I thought they were going to keep the parallels going. I'm glad they didn't.
Right.
Because it is nice to have feel-good stories in the end.
Right.
And I also absolutely hated what they tried to do as the shock twist ending of somebody going in and grabbing the book.
That wasn't a shock twist.
Right. It was honestly kind of boring.
You knew it was going to happen. But I think that's why it was put in the credits. Like, because some of these ending scenes, you know, some of the credits scroll by and then a scene and then... But I think... So, Fear Street books do tend to, like, they wrap up and then somebody else causes, like, a little blip that, you know, is going to pick up in another book. So, but it's also a trope. Which is why I knew the second the girls escaped without taking the spell book with them or trying to burn it or get rid of it, that somebody was going to scoop it up and start the cycle again. I mean, that's just...
I don't know. I was definitely hoping for something.
Right.
Just not something that boring. Like, I was hoping maybe we would have seen the killers gathering in the forest.
I was actually, Nick Good is dead. She stabbed him through the eye. He's lying there. You can tell he's dead. One eye's open, the other eye's gone. I was really hoping to get a blink.
Like he was going to come back?
Yeah, no, I was hoping we'd get a blink. Like, because that would have been a good twist ending, but not make him in charge, just make him a puppet killer, you know?
Right.
Again, I would have liked to see some sort of explanation on how he got pinned as a serial killer. Because while he was, sort of...
What proof does anyone have?
Oh, right. How are they tying him to this?
Do you have proof?
Right. Other than the fact that he was the sheriff and he obviously covered up a lot of this stuff or pinned more deaths on... But like, how are they doing this? Like, maybe they should have shown his study or something where he... I don't know. But you have to remember that Fear Street is pre-teen, teenage. So, honestly, they made these way more graphic than would normally be allowed for that age range. I'm talking the books to the series. So, honestly, having a trope ending like that, some things that aren't wrapped up, like, it's very common for the age range of books, too, because suspended disbelief is basically how you live as a preteen, right?
Right.
Life's gonna be great when I'm an adult. I can't wait to be an adult. Yeah.
So...
Get killed at camp, kids. Get killed at camp.
Right.
Best years of your life.
Third movie was a great ending to the story.
Right.
And again, minus the main protagonist living as Sarah, I had no problems.
Right.
Which, story-wise, definitely makes sense. She cannot do the
Again, I don't know if it was writing or her, but I agree with you. On the flip side, like I said, her acting ability, as far as the emotions and the fear and the right amount of drama, she did an extremely good job. It was the language was sort of the problem, and it does take you out of the moment, so it's a big problem. But like everything else was good.
Right. But yeah, acting was still really solid, other than, like I said, that one part. And honestly, it also might not have necessarily been her fault. It might have been that everyone else was just so fucking good.
Good, yeah.
That she stood out for not being as good as the others.
I loved that they reused the actors and actresses. I love that.
And gave them parallel stories to their actual lives.
Because one of the things Sarah Fear says in her whole kind of cursed promise to Solomon is that this is going to be reoccurring until she promised this to the pastor's daughter, her girlfriend, like, we will be together, like, I'll stay with you and we'll keep doing this until we come to a place where we're not afraid to kiss in the sun, in the open, blah blah blah. So basically, while Solomon, Nick Good's ancestor, started the curse, she started the reincarnation cycles. Right. So I really liked that they did that. It was very good. It tied everything in, helped you understand all of the characters from the previous movies better.
Right.
Other than the ending, and again, it's the book grab, which I expected. I'm not saying I didn't. I'm not explaining Nick Good.
Honestly, here's another reason I don't like the book grab. Unless you plan on doing more, I don't want a something else could happen ending. Like, and I hate when people are like, well, they want you to leave it up to your imagination. Fuck you.
Right. Here's
That's not why I'm watching or reading this.
This is one of the reasons that again, R.L. Stine is prolific. Fear Street alone, there's like over 100. And I mean, like, I have a fair amount of them.
Right.
There's at least one more stack the size of this larger one out there, and that's a small amount of them. So, like I said, he wrote them in like trilogies or so on, but they're all tied into Fear Street. So it made sense in terms of how.
Here's another complaint to the overall series I have. How much is it actually tied into Fear Street? Other than Sarah Fear's name.
Oh, it's actually, I mean, it does a decent job.
Because, like, to my understanding from the research I've done, none of these three movies are based on any of the stories from any of the actual books.
Not really, but it's the same concept. They didn't take an R.L. Stine Fear Street saga and transpose it into a series.
And I guess that's kind of where
and concept.
My problem comes from, is it being named Fear Street and not actually being a Fear Street story.
Although I want to say Sarah Fear, like the whole 1666 witch thing, is a Fear Street thing. Oh, okay. Like the curse. I could be wrong, guys. I haven't read them since I was preteens. I could also be wrong
because I've not read any of them. I'm just going by what I researched because I was curious.
I think somewhere I have the original, like, what explains how Fear Street began somewhere, but
right.
But it is tied in with the Salem witch trial type things, and the founder's name being Fear, spelt F-E-I-R. Yeah.
But I guess this would kind of hit me in a way where, like, now Goosebumps I have read a lot of, but it would have been like them being like, oh, here's a completely new original story,
right?
That's never been mentioned, but we have at least some of the locations from the books here. Like, I would have been disappointed at that.
Yes and no. I mean, like, again, he wrote so many Fear Street novels that while he's a great writer, a lot of tropes start getting used again. And again, you have the 80s horror stuff, which is why this one felt like a trope fest. And it's just sort of that campy horror feeling. And that's kind of what you end up with. So, I mean, having a story that is sort of based in this area, but it's a lot of the lore that he used. And I mean, like, I think it's okay. I think it's like a new story. I think it's okay.
They're good movies.
Right.
I don't know. They could have just named it something completely different and never mentioned R.L. Stine. And that gets rid of expectations.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe because they wanted to use the whole Sarah Fear.
Now, one of the other weird things that this third movie did, and I don't know why, is in between the transition from 66 to present day, they gave us another title screen that said Part 2
of 1994.
It said Part 2 19... Yeah, I think it said Part 2 1994.
Yeah.
Which was not what Part 2 was.
Right. But I think they meant Part 2 of 1994.
Not necessary. We're not 5.
Wasn't. Yeah.
Like...
I agree.
Trust me, this was not made for anything other than under 8, or like, this was not made for anything under 18. Anyone under 18.
It really wasn't.
It's gory, fucks thrown around everywhere, sexual themes.
More than.
Like.
Right.
That's the stupid title was not necessary.
Right. Right. We're following. We are following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so, as, again... And the deaths, there weren't really any in the third one, other than, minus the church full of kids.
Church full of kids. There was
I'm just laying it up to...
The widower.
So here's my problem, though. You don't actually see any of it.
Well, you see
You
him
see
slit
the
her
aftermath of all of them.
Like, they do a flashback of him slitting her throat.
Right.
You don't see him taking that, but I think that's probably because they were kids.
That's where I disagree with horror, and I'm sick of this shit. I get people's sensibilities.
If you're gonna kill kids, you still gotta show it.
Like...
Although, I think part of that was, like, nobody saw it. I think that was kind of, like, supposed to be the creepy thing. You know, the pastor called all the kids, locked them all in, and...
Sure.
So nobody saw it except for him. And honestly, did he see it? What came first? He plucked their eyes out? Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, you see the aftermath of the sow eating her young. You see the dead dog, but you don't see it. I mean, so yes, you're right. You see a lot of...
Aftermath.
Abuse in terms of... them kind of kicking the girls, her getting her hand chopped off, you know, stuff like that. But it's not. But to be fair, in 1666, the only person he had sacrificed at that point was the pastor. There weren't other killers out and about. That was the first. So it has its ups and downs. All around, though, solid miniseries. I will watch it again. I
want to watch them all in a row.
Yeah, like we said, watching the first one twice was actually extremely beneficial. And I would want to watch them all in a row. I want to see 2 and 3 again, for sure. Acting was solid. The soundtracks were fantastic.
And even the soundtrack for the third movie.
It was really good. It wasn't...
It was good, but very...
It was cinematic music.
Cinematic.
Because what are you supposed to do? Like, if you thought the soundtracks for 1994 and 1978 were great, wait until you hear the soundtrack for 1666. A bunch of kids
singing church hymns.
You know what would have been great?
That would have been creepy as...
Yes, that's what I was just saying. What would have been perfect would have been for the kids to be singing nursery rhyme type like, but with the Protestant theme behind them, because you know what, a lot of them were creepy.
Jesus loves a little child.
I don't think that's creepy. Yeah, no. But
it can be done creepy.
Yeah, but I also don't think that's a 1666 sort of theme.
Probably not.
But yeah, so they still did fantastic job. I loved the characters that they created, and I do like that they gave the backstories that they did. What I didn't like, again, we addressed it, was that they didn't give backstories for some of the killers, and therefore they just sort of felt gratuitous. Because honestly, with the ones that they did have, those were the ones that did most of the maiming anyway. Was it really necessary to recall all of them? I mean, you could have just left the concept out that it was possible to call up all of them, but just have
the ones that were used
be the ones that were back from the dead at that point. So,
watch it.
But yeah, watch it. Definitely watch it.
Hopefully, if you've made it this far, you've already watched it, and you just want our opinions.
I mean, like, you'll feel like you did.
Otherwise, we have completely ruined this entire series for you.
Well, maybe. I still think that there's plenty to see.
There's tons we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Especially in the second movie, we left out quite a bit because it's very camp horror.
Yeah, it's
slasher-ish.
Camp Crystal Lake,
so there was no reason to really go into full detail, but
right.
Solid movie, solid soundtrack, solid acting, solid gore, lots of fucking words.
Right. Sexual themes.
Right.
I did like the whole, in terms of like the bullying and how that was dealt with in these, and
I think the two main characters being LBGT actually, or LGBTQ plus,
right?
They've added some letters too. I think them having that character archetype fits the story really well.
It wasn't one of those that I felt like it was just thrown in.
Right.
They really.
That was a lot of behind.
Yeah, whoever created the concept for those characters knew what they were doing, because they put a lot of backstory in them, and then they put the backstory going as far back as 1666. So they really built on it. But they also, in 1666, brought in the thought patterns and the guilt and the stuff that they would have felt being raised Protestant and colonial. And then, to 1994, where it's, it still wasn't quite as well known, accepted, so on and so forth. So you have the, she's now the girlfriend, but the ex-girlfriend at the beginning, who, when she moves towns, is trying to date a guy whose mom hates Sam.
Trying to pretend being somebody she's not, basically.
Trying to pretend to be straight. Yeah. So, but they did a lot of, they didn't just throw them in and go, it's two girls. They really built on the characters and the feeling and the depths of feelings and so on and so forth.
Right.
So definitely watch it. I do recommend it.
Yes.
I'd probably give overall.
I'd give like an 8.
I was gonna say 7.5, which
Still
add
solid.
in the soundtrack for me for all of it, and I give it a 9.
I mean, if you have Netflix, you should just watch it.
Yeah, it's free.
It's free.
And it's there, so why not?
Right.
It's almost 6 hours of entertainment.
True.
And this is another...
There's another episode for you.
This is another 2. Yeah.
Right.
You're welcome.
So I think we'll go ahead and end this here.
Absolutely.
I'm getting kind of tired.
It's time to be tired.
It's like 7 o'clock. Yeah. It's time for bed.
Tired. Yeah.
So with that being said, I guess we love y'all. Watch the movie. Thank y'all for watching. And we cannot wait to see Depraved People later. Peace.